It's been an interesting experience being a woman, being of color, not only of color, but biracial. My father is Jamaican, so it's not something that is very accepted. And so there was a lot of fear when I was younger, when I was starting to figure everything out, of how my dad specifically would react.
I often identify as a two-spirit woman, which really just means female assigned, lesbian, because I have so many intersectionalities. I'm a woman, I'm a mother, I'm brown, I'm gay, I live off the reserve. There's so many things.
So in terms of being a gay male and a person of color, especially in the city of Waterloo, which tends to be predominantly Caucasian, certainly there's been times where I didn't necessarily feel like I was part of that community.
I would describe myself as having many intersections. My family is Palestinian. However, both of my parents were born in Lebanon. And so sort of growing up with that was a lot to kind of navigate. And then coming out as queer, bi, queer has definitely interacted with that in challenging ways as like a teen and an adult.
It's been hard in not seeing other people that are like me. Sometimes I feel like I have to be that leader because I don't see anybody else out there like me. And if there's young people coming up, I want them to not have to deal with what I had to deal with. Representation matters significantly, and especially in the BIPOC community.
I think representation is hugely important. Growing up and only like looking up to Mary-Kate and or Ashley is like a bit of a struggle when you're not Mary-Kate and or Ashley. I wish I had more books and TV shows growing up that made me feel more comfortable with who I was.
Visibility, being able to learn and share, being open and non-judgmental, being open to learn about what it is that we've experienced. Our way of life was banned, it was outlawed, it was illegal. There was very many things that we couldn't do as Indigenous people.
Even for my identity as a person of color, it really didn't happen until honestly my 20s. While I'm a first generation Canadian, I'm a fourth born child. My parents kind of dropped a lot of our culturalism with me growing up. This is something that as I get older, I start to have a bit more regret into, but when you're younger and you're surrounded by all these Caucasian families having all these different kind of cultural experiences than you are, unfortunately, I got jealous. I got curious and I kind of geared myself more towards that. And I do think that it's going to be a continuing struggle for many people of color in terms of understanding their cultural versus the culture of our communities and kind of balancing that out. And then adding the homosexuality into it, to be honest, it drove me not to come out till far later in my life, or even accepting it till far later in my life.
It's like the sort of not white enough for the whites, not brown enough for the brown people, like sort of stuck in the middle kind of situation.
Because you're too brown for white society and you're too white for brown society. You're the apple. You're red on the outside, white on the inside. You just don't fit.
They can understand the struggle. They haven't gone through the struggle. My wife is white. She's never had to go through that. She's seen it, but from a white lens. So she doesn't necessarily understand the actual experience, the lived experience.
When I was single and I was dating, there's all these like you get weird comments, oh, I've never been with a Palestinian chick before. And I'm like, ew, like, cool. I don't really know what to say to that other than yikes.
Back when I was in my early 20s and being on Grindr, you kind of get that experience where as soon as you're a person of color, people don't even want to interact with you.
But I think within the queer community, it hasn't been like overt racism that I've experienced, but just that a lot of the queer spaces are very white. And so I just don't feel super comfortable. So I don't really participate that much. It is like this sort of just quiet exclusion, which is alienating. It's not like actively harmful to me immediately, but it's alienating. And so I think part of that is the reason that I just am not really actively engaged in a lot of queer spaces.
There is a lot of responsibility, and sometimes you want to be able just to be like everybody else and not have to worry about representing a whole community.
We're seeing a lot more marginalized voices sort of having roles of leadership in queer communities. Not enough yet, but more, which is good.